language of Mr. Wenzel, but we don't know what he's doing. Of interest is his left arm that the officer sees as he pushes him away. He talks about feeling resistant tension. You can't see this in this video, but we can see the animated, exaggerated, theatrical movement of Mr. Wenzel with his left arm right up in here. There's the push. There's his left arm, and the officer interjects and initiates physical contact. Okay? Another angle looking at it. Moving on with the Lorberger video. All right, that's pretty quick. That's a quick segment. But within that segment, Officer Wickland says this: put your hands behind your back. He moves from his position of cover and he initiates physical contact with Mr. Wenzel. He has decided at this point he's going to arrest Mr. Wenzel. The charge is disorderly conduct. It's not easy to pick up on here, but when you interview Officer Wickland, he says, look, it was loud there, but I said this clearly to the individual, looked him straight in the eye and told him this as I'm moving forward. So, in the beginning of this, while it goes fast. All right. Okay, so the verbalization's there. There's a response by Mr. Wenzel. So you ask yourself, why does Officer Wickland grab and move Mr. Wenzel out into the street and onto the squad car? Why is he doing that? Why isn't he simply just turning him around, putting his hands behind his back, and effecting an arrest? There are two very distinct actions that we looked at here by Officer Wickland. During initial contact, Officer Wickland is moving Mr. Wenzel and trying to control him. He's trying to control him. He's put his hands on him to control him. Halfway into the street, Officer Wickland continues to assess Mr. Wenzel as he's moving him, and this is what he's hearing. Continued F-U, F-U. This is also the officer feels resistant tension to Mr. Wenzel's body and face. You can't see that in the video. You won't see that. But let's look at some things a little bit faster in another angle here again. Oops. I just want to play this one more time. Right, so from that angle, you may not be able, you're not going to see or understand what that resistive tension is, that agitation, that level or degree of agitation in a person's body, the tenseness of it, if you will. But I'm going to, in a couple minutes, show another angle as well. But let's look at Officer Wickland's details as he puts into report fashion his recollection of what happened. He says, look, these are his words, when Joshua, Mr. Wenzel, reached towards Officer Connolly, I pushed him and told him to stay back. Clearly a lawful order. When I did so, I felt resistive tension in his arms, and he spun and faced me. Can't see it in Lorberger's video, but you can see in the stirrups. Joshua then puffs out his chest, walks towards me, and the look on his face was like he wanted to fight. This is the officer's perception of Mr. Wenzel's reaction. Let's look a little bit deeper into those details as they continue to go on. This is what the officer says. He says, you know what, I did this. I initiated contact and moved him because I feared that if we went to the ground near the angry mob, that someone in that angry mob would have taken a cheap shot at me. Why would you think that? Why is that important? Well, this happened to me before. During a report in 2012, 211-129, and in that case, I was fighting with a male on the ground in almost the exact location when the sister of that person who I was fighting with walked up and kicked me in the face. And subsequently, he sustained a concussion. Going back to how we evaluate things, the importance of this. Graham versus Connor, training and experience of a reasonable officer under similar circumstances. The officer's telling you his experience right here. Moving forward with this video is the point where the actual vertical stun up against the squad car happens. And what he's trying to do here is he's trying to create some dysfunction in Mr. Wenzel. What he's trying to do is kind of intercept that respiratory system, that ability. It gives us what we call an open window of maybe 5 to 7 seconds, that hopefully that stun itself was enough to allow us to move in and safely take control of that person, which is the addition of handcuffs. So let's look at this from that Nines video on the front end. And when we look at this, I want to make sure I got the right one loaded here. I want to do this at half speed. And I'm going to lay out some things here for you that I want you to pay attention to as you see it from this angle. Pay particular attention to Mr. Wenzel's upper torso. Is he facing towards and leaning into the officer, or is he backing up away from the individual? What is he doing with his feet? Does it look like he's driving them into the ground, pushing back, or does it look like he's just being freely moved? So we're looking at this. This is the officers. They're walking through here. He's positioned himself. He initiates contact. Is he leaning into him or pushing backwards? Something we had to look at. And from that angle, it is consistent with Officer Wickland's detail. He says, look, as I'm pushing him, I feel him pushing into me. Not with his hands, but I can feel him leaning into me. This is active resistance. This is what we are training officers to feel and act appropriately upon. Again, without the benefit of that video and only strictly looking at the Lorberger video, you don't see that. What is the continued threat assessment? Throughout this, as they move out into the street and onto the squad, Mr. Wenzel is verbalizing FU. He's leaning into the officer, demonstrating resistant behavior. Distinctly, you can see the officer, even in this picture here, and he says in his interview, I feel this. And the officer lowers his center of gravity to give him a little bit more leverage, to push him up onto that squad car. He feels Mr. Wenzel leaning into him. Officer Wickland stuns him up onto the squad and then decentralizes him, takes him down to the ground. All right, so that's the portion of that video as well. So let's look at it again from this angle with everything I've talked about and understanding threat assessments. It's an ongoing process. From the front, you may not see the angled torso towards Officer Wickland. From the side here, you can. He says, I feel it. I can see it in this video at slow speed. His feet are driving into the ground. They aren't just freely stumbling backwards as though being taken off his feet. Why is all of this important? Okay. You know, much like an NFL football game, folks, on any given Sunday, it's not uncommon to watch action happen at game speed, and when you watch it at game speed, you don't pick everything up. But when there happens to be either a fumble or a potential catch or drop, the game is stopped. Referees take time to look at every video camera in that stadium to give them the benefit of understanding what exactly happened. They're going to take their time. And it is not until you slow down that video, look at it from multiple angles, do you get a better picture of what happened. Because at game time speed, it's hard to decide that. There's some human error there. But those referees have to take their time to evaluate what they see and then make a decision. Not only that, they're going to call New York, they're going to call California or talk to the other experts to make sure they get this right. But they're going to take their time with it. Same with the video. We're doing the exact same thing. We're slowing things down. We're looking at them from every angle. Continuing on with the Lorberger video. Officer Wickland takes Mr. Wenzel to the ground, appears to hit Mr. Wenzel with a focus strike or a punch or some sort of a strike, if you will. We're going to go over this a number of different times here, from a different angle as well. When we look at what just happened there from a different angle, our Coban, our squad Coban video, Officer Connolly's squad, this strike to the midsection is with an open hand, and it's in conjunction with Mr. Wenzel reaching up at him. And again, I'm going to slow down some of this. But I want to be able to set some things into context so everyone understands what is also being said as they're on the ground. These are Mr. Wenzel's words. Get the F off of me. Clearly indicative of somebody that is not being controlled. They're not cooperative. I will submit that this is continued resistance. He needs to overcome that, right? And so when you're on the ground with individuals, we've got to be careful here. This is a very dangerous situation, whether we're on top or not. And I'm going to show you in slow speeds the importance of understanding how dangerous that can be. Again, Mr. Wenzel's demonstrating continued resistance. We overcome that by active countermeasures. This is what we teach. An active countermeasure could be a focus strike. There are a number of different, there's 8 of them, but they're strikes. What I'm going to ask is that you watch Mr. Wenzel's hands. Ask yourself, is he in and under control? Is he giving up? Is he submitting? All right. So this is at regular speed. First strike. Okay. Regular speed. Again, very fast. May not be picking up on it. Still grabbing to the officer's hands, but let's slow things down here a little bit. Actually, this is another live one yet. I've got a number of live ones in there. This is the second part of that. Let's watch that again, just so I took it in context. The slower one is going to be the 1 or 2 frames after. I apologize. But after you went to the ground, right now let's watch. This is that second strike, and it's just larger. There's the first, right? Open hand. There's the second. Open hand, strike to the face. So I'm going to look at this a little bit slower so that we can get a better understanding. And I'm asking you to watch Mr. Wenzel's hands. Watch his right knee. The officer says, look, I feel that knee come up into my groin, my midsection, and he's pushing on me. And we see that from the Lorberger video that he scoots and pushes himself back, consistent with what the officer's details. But this isn't about half speed. There, the officer's lowering himself, right? That's the part we talked about, that resistive tension, the torso pointed forward. The officer moves him from the squat down onto the ground, a decentralization. This is what he's trying to bring him to the ground. Watch the hands of Mr. Wenzel. First strike, open hand, palm. He said it was blocked. That's what Officer Wickland said. Watch his hands. Even importantly, even after the strike, he was struck to the face. Watch this hand. Grabbing. He's holding, he's latched onto that hand. An instinctual reaction, pulling back, finally gets it away, and is able to turn him on his belly. At game day speed, folks, you're not going to see that. You don't see that in the Lorberger video as well. I will submit to you as well, while being on top of an individual does not mean you're winning. Anyone who has experience in grappling and understanding ground fighting techniques understands the importance of controlling arms. And if you watch that, as the officer is striking him, he doesn't have him under control. He is still actively resisting. He is grabbing a hold of the officer's wrists, indicative of us of continued resistance. Moving on. See that scoop back? Let's play that again. The officer says, look, I can feel that knee into my groin and he's pushing up into me. Game day speed once again. What you will see then in the remainder of this is once control is established, right? When we watch on the front end of the video, once control is established, you must reduce your level of force to that level needed to maintain control. Once we've established control. Understand that handcuffs aren't always control. Handcuffs are not synonymous with somebody being under control. It's just a restraint device. But in this instance, once he's in handcuffs, he stops resisting. Again, what is this? This requires a considerable amount of self-control. It's part of being a professional law enforcement officer. Your role, again, is neither to be passive nor to be aggressive. You instead must be assertive. The techniques you learn that we teach to all the officers in the DAT system are designed to enable you to achieve control of disruptive subjects and to defend yourself. So, when we look at Mr. Lorberger's video,
It was you.
taking place. He's being placed in the handcuffs. He's being assisted by other officers. Ask yourself, are they reducing the level of force needed to control him?
Yeah.
Looks like a tall baby.
Oh no, that's Jake right there.
Oh, whatever, sure of it.
You guys back?
I thought it was you. I was like, holy cow. You did that so soft.
Nothing happened. That's all. Hey, no, the cops are literally a dude could have asked what went wrong. Cop literally turned and just shoved him to the ground.
Just watch, this is our follow-through considerations. I just want you to see that after that control has been established and maintained,
How is this?